And we're live with another podcast. Mike here with Mitch.
Right over here. Let's get started with some Erik Karlsson news. So,
It seems like every time we get on here, it's something different with him.
yeah, yesterday there were reports from The Athletic that the Dallas Stars were the front runners to get Erik Karlsson. There was talk of the Senators really wanting number 3 overall pick from the 2017 draft, Miro Heiskanen, as a centerpiece to a deal. Since then, it's been reported that the Stars have balked at that offer, that they aren't willing to include Heiskanen in any deal, which it appears as though talks are slowing big time with those two teams. And now, reported by Ottawa Sun columnist Don Brennan on Twitter, he said, a source who has a great batting average says he feels, quote, very comfortable with the source that tells him that Karlsson will be traded to the Tampa Bay Lightning. That was this morning at 6:48 a.m. And others, including Travis Yost, have kind of hopped on to that and said they've heard the same. People have also freaked out because on Instagram, Erik Karlsson recently followed a personal account for Steven Stamkos, which everyone knows that obviously means it's
Obviously.
So we're under the impression that maybe something's close. I would assume if that was the case, that it was done this morning, that it would have already been announced, or at least picked up by a bigger name insider like a Bob McKenzie or Darren Dreger or someone of that nature.
Yeah, but that's just me thinking if they haven't picked it up yet, that it might either not be finalized yet or it may not even be close. Or
well, you also have to take into account the fact that there's a good chance that this deal would also include a contract extension.
Right.
Agreed upon between Karlsson and the Lightning.
They were doing a sign and trade, right? Or
that hasn't necessarily been reported.
Right.
But one would assume that would likely be the case.
Considering then if they put him like he can kind of pick where he kind of wanted to get traded to or has some say in it.
He has a big say in it just because obviously the team acquiring Karlsson would be much more likely to give up more to the Senators if they had a deal in place. So it works for both sides, both the Senators and the Lightning or whomever they're trading with.
Right.
So
because it seemed like at first it was Vegas who was the front runners and they kind of fell off, and then it was Dallas, they've fallen off, and now it seems to be the Lightning.
So who knows?
I don't know if it's because Ottawa's asking too much out of these teams just for Karlsson. Or if it's somehow Karlsson, or there's something that one side's not liking.
Elliot Friedman did say on the radio, reportedly said on the radio this morning, that Karlsson has told the Senators that the Lightning are the team that he's most interested in signing with, and essentially that there's a good chance that may be the only team he's willing to sign an extension with. So that also could have obviously taken out some potential suitors like maybe the Stars or the Golden Knights.
But with going to the Lightning, they only have for this upcoming. They only have $4 million in the cap.
Yeah, they only have $4 million in cap space.
And Karlsson's $6.5 million for his contract. So I don't.
So right now there isn't exactly a fit salary cap wise. Obviously,
unless
there would have to be another move made. Or also maybe someone included back in the deal with the Senators with some salary, although with talks of potentially wanting Bobby Ryan included in a deal, I don't know how feasible it is that they would take on a contract. I don't see that happening.
Because both teams seem to be not really great cap-wise this season, or have wanted to try to dump, or at least Ottawa wants to dump some of that salary off.
Yeah, obviously with them being a team with less money. They want to send salary out the door. Maybe they could send some sort of a dead contract where there's a high cap hit, but maybe not as high of a salary.
Yeah. But Bobby Ryan at 7.25 mil.
It's been reported that potentially there could just be like a 3-team deal to get Bobby Ryan somewhere else, a third team acting as somewhere for Bobby Ryan to come to, get some assets from either the Senators or the Lightning to be involved. But with them needing to clear out cap space, it's been reported throughout the offseason that potentially Tyler Johnson could be a guy who's moved. Something making that a little bit more difficult is he had a no trade clause kick in on July 1st. So it would have been much easier for them to have moved him prior to July 1st. Now he obviously has a say in it. He has $5 million a year cap hit for the next 6 years. So it's a big contract.
Right. But if they were to somehow get him, they have to be everyone's favorite to win the cup.
Oh yeah, the Lightning.
Because they would have 2 of the top 5 defensemen in the league.
Without a doubt.
On one blue line.
Yeah.
Even if they aren't playing together, that's still...
Yeah, you could either do one of two things. You could either have both of them on the ice together for 30 minutes a game, or you could split them up and have them on the ice for almost the entire game, at least one of them.
Yeah.
There's a lot of different options they could have there. And, yeah, I would assume that makes them a favorite to win the Stanley Cup.
They were close this year, but they lost to the Capitals, obviously. But
yeah, they've been close the past few years,
except for the one year where they just kind of fell off and everything.
Yeah,
but other than that, they've been close.
Yeah, they've made it to the Stanley Cup in 2015. Lost to the Blackhawks. Obviously, not this past season, the season before, they missed the playoffs, but this year making to the conference final.
Yeah,
losing to the Capitals.
Because if you look at the team overall, you would think it'd be
on paper at least. Yeah.
On paper, they have Vasilevsky's a good goaltender. They have the top, everything you need for a Stanley Cup team. They have, essentially.
They have that number one center in Steven Stamkos. They have a great Nikita Kucherov, one of the best wingers in the NHL. Then you have Hedman and potentially Karlsson.
Yeah.
Along with Vasilevsky, as you said. So, yeah, this is definitely a team that if they add Karlsson, they have to be the favorites.
Yeah.
To win the Stanley Cup. And... yet again, it goes back to that whole playoff format with the Maple Leafs. The past 24 hours, teams have been dubbing them the favorites to win the Stanley Cup after adding John Tavares. And these two teams next season will meet in the second round.
Well, even before this trade, if this trade were to be made, I want to consider, even with the addition to Tavares, that they were a Stanley Cup team. I think they could go far, maybe win a series or two, but they don't have that defense to really make a Stanley Cup contender for me.
Yeah,
I don't know how you feel about that, but for Toronto,
me, I would say they're a contender. I wouldn't say they're the favorite at the moment, even without a Karlsson trade to the Lightning. I think I like the Lightning more even without Karlsson at the moment. Even a team in the West like San Jose, Vegas got even better. So there are a few teams who are right there with the Maple Leafs.
Even
with the addition of
Florida got better. Getting Hoffman. So the Atlantic got better this offseason.
The Atlantic definitely improved. So even with the addition of John Tavares, I'm not quite sure how many more points they're going to have next season. They
already were a top offensive threat already.
Yeah, they were already among the top teams in the NHL at offense. So that addition, I think with a Karlsson addition, though, the Lightning are heavy favorites to win the Stanley Cup. I just don't see a team who on paper really matches up well against them. Obviously,
my only other thing I could think of is the Penguins, but that's just because of Crosby, and that's just a team you'd always think
has a chance, just because they have Crosby and Malkin, and even I could see the Maple Leafs beating the Lightning just because they have that same sort of 1-2 1-2 punch that maybe the Lightning wouldn't necessarily be able to match up against, especially if they trade a guy like Tyler Johnson. It's another top 6 center.
But defensively wise, at that point, you can split up Hedman and Karlsson if they were to get Karlsson.
And match them up against each of them. So, and
Karlsson almost beat the Penguins when in Ottawa on one leg.
Yeah, and now presumably healthy with a much better team. You would think that's something that the Lightning could pull off beating the Penguins. I think they're definitely a favorite against any team next season.
They've been busy for a team that doesn't have much cap. They've been busy this offseason because there were rumors they were interested in Tavares. That didn't happen. Now there's this possibly getting Karlsson. Yeah,
they're obviously a team that sees themselves as a contender and that their window is open right now, and they want to make any move possible to make it make this a Stanley Cup winner, because for as great as they have been, and they maybe have been the best team in the league for the past 3 or 4 seasons, they still don't have a Stanley Cup for it to show for it. So obviously they're in a spot right now where they're trying to get any variable out of the picture that they are the best team, that they should win the Stanley Cup. So there really are no excuses next season, especially with Karlsson potentially being added to the Tampa Bay Lightning.
Yes, I think Kucherov should have been a finalist.
You think he should have been a finalist for the Hart Trophy?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think he would have been a bad choice. I mean, the points he put up, especially in the beginning of the season.
But there was always that thing with he's playing with Stamkos, so.
So yeah, it took him out of the picture immediately, especially with just everything around him. So the Flyers, they
made a move today too.
They did make a move. The Flyers signed Christian Folin, formerly of the Los Angeles Kings, to a 1-year, $800,000 contract, presumably to be their 7th defenseman.
Yeah. My only fear, and we kind of talked about this earlier when the signing first happened, is if he's like another Manning. Where he's supposed to be the 7th person, but Haxtell just likes something about him and he plays all the time.
Yeah, that's always going to be a fear with adding anyone to be that depth guy.
Yeah.
So,
he's never really played that, like 2016-17, 51 games, last season 65 games. He's
never really been a mainstay in any lineup with the Kings, and
or
he's
Minnesota before he was in LA.
So he's a right-handed shot, which obviously the Flyers, with only Radko Gudas being right-handed, it was something that they were targeting this offseason. I presume, like I said before, you presume that he's the 7th guy.
Yeah.
I want to think he's the 7th guy, but like you said, with Dave Haxtell there, you never know what's going to happen.
I mean, I thought that with Oduya, but he lasted 1 game.
Yeah,
and
so
he didn't really.
Situation.
Yeah.
But one thing that scared me when I read it and I was reading the press release the Flyers put out is that he led the Kings in hits per game at over 2, which is something that I fear Dave Haxtell overvalues in a player. So I could definitely see him seeing Folin. I think Folin is pretty well guaranteed not to start the season in the lineup.
Yeah.
Just like Brandon Manning last season didn't start the season in the lineup.
But going off that, how would you, or we can get to that in a second, but...
but I think there's a good chance that at some point, obviously, there are going to be injuries.
Yeah.
Or maybe someone's
if
gets like benched for poor play, and I think then there's the possibility that he could fall in love with Folin and want to put him in over some of the younger guys.
Or even if it's like Gudas sometimes gets hurt for like a game or two where you just need someone for a couple of games. He would come in. But if it's like a guy like Ghost or Sanheim or someone, or someone's hurt for a long time, then I feel like they'd bring up Myers.
Yeah, I think they definitely... An injury would depend on the role of the player.
Yeah.
I think if you saw Andrew McDonald or Radko Gudas get injured, I think it's much more likely that a guy like Folin would come into the lineup.
Right.
Versus, like you said, if it's a Sanheim, if it's a Gostisbehere, then it's more likely that they would send up Philippe Myers. And that's at least what I hope.
Yeah. Well, you would think it'd be Morin just because of there, but he has an injury, so Myers kind of jumps him.
Yeah, he's out for most of the rest of the season. So.
And injuries obviously happen. And
yeah, so Folin is a guy, even if the Flyers do see him, and if Dave Haxtell sees him as the 7th defenseman and plays him there for the entire season, there are going to be injuries, as we saw last year. So he will play at times for the Flyers. And by all accounts, I mean, he's not someone who I...
Hextall's been known for when they're struggling just to change it up. He just throws them in the lineup. Yeah.
But Folin, I didn't know much about him prior to this signing. I had seen his name come up in terms of just people writing about potential signings for depth guys. He is meh.
Yeah. That's all you can really say.
There's nothing spectacular about anything in his game.
No.
He's a bigger guy. He's 6'3".
He's not going to put up any offense or points for you, though.
He was undrafted. There's just not a lot to write home about. He was a college free agent that supposedly the Flyers were a finalist for, but he ended up signing with the Wild.
Yeah.
Outside of that, there's really not much there. I think a lot of people were concerned as soon as they saw the signing that potentially a guy like Philippe Myers could be blocked by this guy, that this would make his road.
I just think it makes it easier for Sanheim to make the lineup then, or be in the lineup, or Haig.
Yeah, I think Folin, I don't necessarily see how he blocks a guy like Myers, just because I really do think that Folin they see as a seventh guy, but you could also look at it as, okay, if Myers is making the lineup, he's not likely to take a guy like Sanheim or Haig out of the lineup because they're those young players that have NHL experience. If he somehow makes the team, there's a good chance it could be a Radko Gudas taken out of the lineup. And then you run into the problem of, okay, then we'll put Gudas in the press box, but then what do we do with Folin? They'd likely have to put him on waivers, send him down. And then I don't know how comfortable Ron Hextall would be doing that, considering the fact that he makes very little. There could be an injury in camp for another team.
True.
So he could be someone who was claimed on waivers.
Marcotte was claimed.
Exactly. It could be a similar
situation. And then
he
resigned for a couple years.
Yeah, with the Avalanche. Yeah, so it's...
But I feel like he'd be... Because what was the signing for?
$800,000.
$800,000. I don't think it would be the biggest loss if someone claimed him off waivers.
Yeah, I don't think so either, but I think Hextall could see it as that could deter him. I'm not saying that this completely blocks Myers from the team. No. I'm just saying that this could be a slight deterrent to him making the team just because...
You could say that same thing last year with Sanheim, where you thought Manning was kind of the person that was keeping Sanheim out. But Sanheim eventually came up and played.
But Manning wasn't a guy who was originally penciled in as a seventh guy.
Right.
It was that he pushed him to the seventh. I'm saying that Folin would then have to go to the AHL as opposed to where Manning wouldn't have had to or didn't have to last year. And in that case, he could potentially be claimed, and Hextall obviously likes him as a depth signing, so he would want someone there who he could trust to play 30, 40 games in the NHL.
And he was saying in his press conference that he wanted to sign a depth guy, defenseman, and this was him.
Yeah, this is their guy. So I saw the signing, and I'm like, oh, they signed someone. And it's Christian Folin. Okay.
Yeah.
You read a little bit about him, and it's just, okay. Okay. Hopefully, Hextall doesn't play him 60 games this season. That's pretty much all.
That's all you can hope for. Yeah. Just for that.
Exactly.
But I guess that brings us, or to go off that, for the defense, even just going off, because Hextall changed it all the time last season, because it's not going to be the same, but saying game one, how would you see the pairs lined up?
Yeah, so I think this pretty much shores up who is at least on the roster.
Yeah.
Come the fall, so I think it'll likely be. I don't see Myers making the team. Obviously, he could.
He could. It's possible.
But I didn't see Sanheim making the team last year, so I think it's a similar situation. And obviously Sanheim did, but I think it'll end up being Provorov, Gostisbehere. The second pair I would consider to be Sanheim, Gudas, but I think they would say that's a third pair. Yeah. And then have Haig and McDonald as what they would see as the second pair. At least they played second minutes. You see any differences there?
No, I would like to see Provorov and Ghost together again, but there's always that chance that he goes Provorov, McDonald.
Yeah,
I think at the start of the year, it's not as important as when it was in the playoffs for him.
When they did change.
Yeah. So I think it's just going to go back to what worked, which was Provorov and Ghost together.
Yeah.
It would probably be maybe McDonald and Haig again, or McDonald, Gudas, and then you put Haig and Sanheim together.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure. Ron Hextall has said that he's starting to see guys like Haig, because he played the entire season with the Flyers. He almost sees him as a veteran, not really. Yeah. So I don't know how comfortable he would be with him playing with Sanheim.
I just hope it's because they both have.
Like a rookie,
I just hope that since they both have some experience, or since Haig had almost a full season, that he'd be okay more with putting them together.
I could definitely,
or at least as in a test, a couple games or two of them together.
Yeah, I think after, like you said earlier, Hextall does occasionally put the lineup in a blender. So if they go on a 3-game losing streak or something, I could definitely see that as happening. I don't think it's going to happen at the start of the year necessarily, but I think that is something that could happen eventually. So yeah, Myers, in terms of his, obviously he's the guy that we both left out.
Yeah. We talked about him a little bit, but
I think he's got a chance, but I would put it at like a 30%, 25% chance.
But out of all the other guys who can make the team, I feel like he probably still has the best odds out of them, but still the odds for him aren't great.
Yeah, I think this is a year where it's a lot less likely that there's a rookie in the lineup unless you consider a guy like Oscar Lindblom.
Yeah. Or maybe Abe Kubel if he's up or
potentially. Even then, I don't necessarily see that happening.
Because did they sign Lear yet, or?
I believe he was offered. He was given a qualifying offer, but at the moment they have not re-signed.
Yeah. So if they don't get him back, they need a person to put on. Even though they've been having him in the press box for a little bit. But.
He's someone who arbitration. You can start filing for arbitration now. I think that's by the end of the day. We'll know who filed for arbitration.
Okay.
So Lear is someone who could potentially do that.
Yeah.
He's obviously not going to do a big deal. Robert Haig's another restricted free agent who hasn't re-signed yet. Both of them are likely to return on small contracts. Haig, obviously, it's more likely to be a multi-year deal. I think Lear probably will get a 1 year.
Yeah.
About $1 million, a little less. Haig could potentially get something like
a 3-year deal.
3-year deal, like 3.5.
Maybe something similar to what Morin got.
I think he'll probably get more just because at least Haig has proven, at least in the eyes of the Flyers, that he is an NHL defenseman.
Yeah, I meant more like years-wise, like 3 or 4.
Yeah, I think he'll end up getting about 3 years, like $3 million or something like that. Just a deal where they show that they trust him and that obviously he's earned some money.
Yeah.
But also there's still some wiggle room to where maybe they're not handcuffing themselves if he turns into nothing.
And last season was the biggest question with Haig. Like they weren't really sure what they had out of him because compared to the other defensemen he has, he's not as dynamic. He doesn't make the big plays. It's the little things that he does. Or the longest time he was leading the league in hits.
Yeah. He's not someone who necessarily stands out from a skill perspective.
Yeah.
In the
he even at
zone,
some points went up in the when they were he would go up in the or up more.
Yeah. He at times, especially, it's something I would have liked to have seen more, just because when you watched him.
But I think that was more of his confidence going in that he would be able to do that.
His first NHL game in the 2016-17 season, it was the last game of the season against the Devils. He jumped in the rush more, which I think got people more excited about him this year. He kind of strayed away from it a little. He did do it at times, but I think
he did against Ottawa. I remember that was.
Yeah, he made a couple plays where you're like, holy shit, where has this guy been?
Yeah.
So
But you could even say that about Morin in the preseason. He made the one move.
Yeah, he's another one who. But Haig, I'd like to see him do that more this upcoming season.
Yeah, take more chances.
If we just look just a little league news. Shea Weber, torn meniscus.
Ouch.
Torn meniscus in his left leg, I believe. His left knee, I mean. So he's still recovering from foot surgery, which he had in March. This is another 5 to 6 months.
Yeah.
It's a similar injury, or the same injury even, that we saw Anthony Stolarz sustain. And it's one where it's common to re-injure, just like Anthony Stolarz did, where it could even become like a full year recovery if it were to happen again. So that for the Canadians, oof.
Yeah, not good. For the already 32-year-old defenseman
who's still has 8 years left on his contract.
Yeah.
At 7 at over.
One that could have completely messed over the Flyers if they were to sign him. If they did.
If the Predators hadn't have matched it.
Yeah.
So I mean that takes them to even worse.
Yeah.
In terms of I don't know how likely
it'll be similar to this year because he only played 26 games last year. So I mean.
But he was not exactly likely to start the season this year because of that original foot surgery.
Yeah.
But he would have played the majority of the season. But now with this knee thing, I mean, he's gone until probably next year in terms of 2019.
The knee injuries are always brutal too.
Yeah, he's already got someone who's lost a step or two, so this is something where...
Because even Morin's had his knee issue. He tore his ACL.
Exactly, yeah. So for Weber, I mean, for someone who's already likely getting overpaid, and someone who's, like I just said, has lost a step, this is another step to lose here. So that contract's just looking worse and worse along with that trade that the
Nashville made with Montreal.
Exactly. So yeah, the Canadians just look like they're going to be bottom of the barrel again this year.
But it looks like there's going to be a battle for that bottom one.
I mean, yeah, you look at...
Because there's the Islanders who got significantly worse, and then they made some questionable moves since trading away Tavares.
Yeah, the signings of Komarov and Filippo, like we talked about before, they are they're not good.
No.
But then
they did sign Leonard, but...
Yeah, it's an okay move.
Yeah.
Nothing to write home about, really.
Yeah.
It's their best of their moves. But then fighting for the bottom, you look at Ottawa.
Oh, yeah, they trade for Matt Martin.
Yeah, exactly. So another fourth liner they just added. But you look at the worst teams, like you just said, fighting for that last spot. Ottawa obviously blowing up their team. Montreal with the Shea Weber news, although Carey Price could lift them to a bubble team just by himself.
But he could also be he's another person who always is injured. So
and at 30, it's even more likely.
Yeah.
But then you also look at like a team like the Canucks and all the terrible moves they made, including giving Jay Beagle a multi-year deal. I think it was even 4 years for Jay fucking Beagle, who is not good.
No, he's not.
It's one of those things where like if you're a guy on a Stanley Cup winning team, you're automatically assumed just because you were a part of the team.
That's like those guys who get signed because they were on a first line with Crosby, but end up being nothing.
Yeah, it's just assumed that because he played on this team that he played every night that he had some magical effect and will have that effect with the Vancouver Canucks. Like that's one of those teams where like if I understand overpaying for a guy if you're like you think you're about to contend and you think this guy has some Stanley Cup experience or whatever, adding a guy like a Justin Williams like the Capitals did a couple years ago.
4 years, $12 million for Jay Beagle.
Yeah. And a matching contract for Antoine Roussel, so oof. But I understand that type of move for a Stanley Cup winning guy, a guy with that type of pedigree. If you're a team like the Capitals, when they added Williams, they added Justin Williams. It didn't work, obviously, but I understand it.
Yeah.
But a team like this, what do they need Stanley Cup experience for? They're not even going to come close to the playoffs. They aren't. They may be the worst team in the NHL next season, the Canucks.
They could be, but they have a pretty decent prospect system, right?
Yeah, Elias Pettersson is pretty great. They added Quinn Hughes in the draft, so they have some guys. They're not completely They're not a complete dumpster fire like the Senators are.
No,
but in terms of their NHL roster, they're pretty close to a dumpster fire.
Yeah, I just realized Scott Wilson signed with Buffalo.
Oh yeah,
he's no longer in Washington.
No, not Tom Wilson. Scott Wilson signed. Tom Wilson still with the Capitals.
Okay. Ignore that.
Yeah, and Boone Jenner today signed a contract extension with the Columbus Blue Jackets.
As did Andre Schuster, 1 year, $1.3 million.
And Boone Jenner re-signed with the Columbus Blue Jackets. Schuster signing with the Ducks.
Ducks, yeah.
Jenner, 4 years, $3.75 million. He's their alternate captain, 25 years old. He's good for about a half a point per game. He's a good third line center, an okay second line center. And I guess if
they do end up trading Panarin, they're gonna need someone.
Yeah, it's just they're a team. Like it's surprising to me how well they've done when looking at this offense just on paper. Because they last season they used Pierre-Luc Dubois as their number one center, and it worked out. It worked out okay. Yeah. I mean, obviously Panarin still played well. He was playing with some great wingers, but after that, center wise, you got Alex Wennberg is a good player. I mean, he's a decent second line center, but then you have Boone Jenner, who's okay, and then you have a guy. Now they added Riley Nash. So.
And Bobrovsky's up next season.
Yeah, so they're a team that I have some questions on just offensively, and then like you said, Bobrovsky. There's been reports that he may not want to re-sign with. Kevin Weeks from NHL Network tweeted that there's a chance that Sergei Bobrovsky doesn't necessarily want to re-sign.
Yeah.
With the Columbus Blue Jackets,
and I'm assuming they're going to want to give it because Werenski's up next season too. I'm going to assume they're going to want to give him a pretty good.
Yeah, as a restricted free agent, there's a little more wiggle room in terms of money.
Yeah, but still, they're gonna want to put some money into him and to Werenski.
They are a team who's got some cap space. They got 11.5 at the moment. Next season they'll open up some more. They got a few restricted free agents, but that problem really is Bobrovsky is an unrestricted free agent. They got to tie him down soon. Yeah, along with Artemi Panarin, which we mentioned. If they lose both of those guys, the team is back.
They're back to what they were before. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, they still have a good shutdown pair, but outside of that, it's going to be nothing.
Even without those two, they have a foundation. But I mean, in terms of contending now, they need to re-sign Bobrovsky and Panarin. Without them, I just don't see much in them.
Yeah, you could kind of see it in that Capital series. They couldn't finish it off. They were up 2-0. Two games, and they just couldn't.
And some people blame that on Bobrovsky. His numbers aren't great in the playoffs, but at the end of the day, I think it has a lot more to do with the lack of center depth and just depth in general.
There's that, and I also don't think Tortorella is the best coach either.
Yeah, I mean, I liked his.
We're gonna win comments. This. Yeah, we're gonna win this game, and you end up losing.
I liked his comments. After the Jack Johnson signing with the Penguins. You hear about that one?
No, I didn't.
So Jack Johnson obviously signed a way too big contract with the Pittsburgh Penguins.
Oh, yeah.
And Jack Johnson was talking about how he signed in Pittsburgh because he wanted to go to a winning culture, which, I mean, you can't... If you're a Blue Jackets fan, I know that's annoying because you're eventually... pretty much just saying that the Blue Jackets have been terrible and they've always been terrible, but they've never even won a playoff series in their history, so you can't. That's not a winning culture. But after that, general manager Jim Rutherford of the Pittsburgh.
Yeah, they signed Jack Johnson to 5 years, $16 million.
Yeah, way too much. But Jim Rutherford said that when asked about Jack Johnson and that giving that big of a contract when he missed time in the playoffs as a healthy scratch. He said that he wasn't sat because of his play on the ice. He knows what the issue was, but he's not going to say. So John Tortorella did not take too kindly to that because he took that as him saying that John Tortorella wasn't fully trying to win and wouldn't play his best players to win. So John Tortorella threw a few expletives in there.
He never does that.
I know, telling Rutherford to shut the fuck up. A lot of it was just a great quote. I wish there was video of it.
Yeah.
Around it was just I believe it was an Athletic article. The Athletic article. It was really great. You need to read it. Outside of that, not a ton of news. Obviously, we're getting close to the dead period.
Yeah, the dead period in the NHL.
Yeah, especially when we get to August, there's really going to be a whole lot of nothing. But hopefully, with the rumors we've had with Karlsson, that could potentially be
Eric Frickness decides if he wants to come back or whatever. Yeah, whatever happens in his camp, because there's been things saying he might not come back.
He might retire, So there's still some things that could happen the rest of the off season, and we will be here to talk about it.
Yep. And until then, see you.